Okay, welcome to this video. So in today's practical, what we're gonna be demonstrating is how to connect now our chatbot with a Firebase database. So our chatbot now will have some backend, and we're going to build something like a lookup bot, a bot which will be able to answer questions or at least define some terms which the user poses to it. A database basically is a structured storage of information. And the one we're going to be using is a type of database called a NoSQL database. So you interact with the database via JavaScript. So it's much easier to work with because you don't need to install anything. It's a service, and so it is a service maintained and owned by Google. If you're familiar with a relational database, this data is stored in tables, a table format. So that's a more traditional database. But this one, the newer types of this NoSQL database, all this information is stored in Json. So you have to navigate first to firebase.com. As you can see, this is the interface, an overview of what Firebase is. So it says here, build apps fast without managing infrastructure. Okay, so Firebase gives you functionality like analytics, messaging, and crash reporting. We're going to be focused on this one, which is databases. So again, this is backed by Google, so you can be assured of its reliability and its speed. So it's actually built for apps, right? But it can be used for anything. It can be built for websites. It can also be built. We're going to use it for our chatbot as well. So let's just go ahead and get started here. Okay, so let me just type in my project name here. So I will call this thing lookup bot 2. Okay, because I already have a lookup bot, so you can call it whatever you want. It is not important because this will not appear in your chatbot. I'm just gonna disable this. You can enable it. It will make no difference whatsoever. Okay, so there. So it's creating the project right now, and that's it. Simple as that. So you've created a project. So I'm just going to continue. And so here is the interface for Firebase. So we have the project overview here. If you can actually create more than one. Okay, I only have one project. So the next thing is right now I'm in this project now, which is lookup bot 2, and then here I have the project overview here. Okay, so let's click on develop here. So you see, as I click on develop, we're going to see here database. So this is where we're going to be focused on for our chatbot. Now we want to build a database for it to look up some data. Okay, so you will have two options here. One is called Cloud Firestore. That is not what we want. Okay, we want the older one, which is the real-time database. It's an easier database to work with. Cloud Firestore is if you have certain more complicated requirements, which we do not. So I'm just going to create the database now. So I'm going to start here in test mode. You have two options here. Test mode is for developing. There will be less restrictions, security restrictions, so it's easier to work with. Okay, so I'm just going to start with test mode. Okay, so basically the rules here will be set to read and true and write is true. So anybody can read and write this database. It'll be less secure, but it'll be easier to work with. So make sure you start in test mode. Okay. All right, so this is your database. This is basically your database, right? So notice your database, once it's created, you'll see if you set it in test mode, the rules are set to true. Okay. Now, if you did not, you failed that step. You did not set it in test mode, then this will be false. So you have to change it to true in that situation. All right. Anyway, this is how it's supposed to look like. All right. Let's go back to our database now. All right. So the next thing is, how do you actually create the data? Okay. So I'm going to show you the manual way, and then later on we're going to upload the data through a text file. So there are two ways. The manual way is actually to add the keys in this fashion. Okay, so you can basically create a key here. Right, so let's say, okay, so let's say I have something like definitions, right? This is a key, right? So if you can imagine this, the whole thing is an object. It's an empty object. Okay, so when I put a definitions here, I'm actually adding a key to this. Okay, let me show you. So just follow along with me first, and then I'll how to add more keys here. So inside this, I can actually add another key. Okay, so I can say here item 1. Right, so that's another key inside definitions. And then let's just say, okay, so let's say I have this glossary. Okay, so let's say this bot will answer questions related to Dialogflow. Okay, so maybe I will this is as an example. Let's just copy this. Let's just put here title, value is action. Okay, I'll make it lowercase first to make it simple. Okay, so I'll just call this thing definition, right? So this is the key, and this is the value. Let's click add to that. So it'll turn green for a while once it's added. So now I have a key called definitions. Inside this, I have another key called item 1. Then you have another key called definition, another key called title, and this is the value for each of these. Okay, let's just add another one. So you just click the plus button there to add. Right, so let's just call this item 2. Sorry, let me just do that again. Click. So make sure there's a value. So if you're not going to put a value, you have to put a key inside this. Right, so let's just put again title. Let's just use another one. Let's say agent. All right, so we have another one. So you get the idea. Let's just add another third one. Okay, so this is now basically our database, as you can see. Let me just add another one. So this is now our database, right? In this case, so you can see that you can structure your database in any way, right? You can call it whatever key you think is useful. You can nest it in the way that you want. So I am just structuring it in this way. There could be a few ways to do this. Now let me just show you that this is actually just a JSON. So if I actually go over here, right, and then I actually export JSON. So you see, so if I open this up, so I'm gonna right click this and open this with a text editor. So you can see that it's just a JSON. So you see it's just JSON data. So these are the curly braces, right? And then again, this is the key. And then it's a key value. So inside this, you have this JSON. This object, right? And inside this object, you have item 1, right? Which is another object. And then you have definition, title with this. And then here you have comma, item 2, another key. Then you have definition, title, item 3. Right? So there's no rules in terms of what you're going to name it. That'll be up to you. That is the gist of what Firebase is. It's just a JSON formatted database which you access via JavaScript. Now in our practical, I already have the data, so you don't have to waste time doing it. But I do encourage you to later on experiment and come up with your own ways of storing data. Okay, so I have the database here. You could just download the data directly. Right, so what you can do is just right click this, then just download link file. So let's just look at it. You can look at it with Visual Studio Code or any text editor. You can open that as well in Visual Studio Code. Okay, so I'm just showing you a bunch of ways. Yeah, it's the same actually. Okay, so that's our data. So it's very important that you understand the structure of this data. Oh, this is an entire object, right? Which is under this key definitions. Then inside this are a bunch of keys: item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4. Okay, so that's how you would structure data in Firebase. You don't use arrays. You actually use a lot of keys to store multiple items, right, inside a database. Okay, so what we're going to do now is import this data. All right, so I showed you the manual process. But right now we're going to replace this with and import our data. Okay, so I'm just showing you multiple ways to create our data. So I'm just going to go over here and import the JSON. Then I will just browse here. I just choose one of these. If your JSON has no errors, then it will work fine. There it is. Okay, so now we have our data. So you can see that in Firebase, you can close this, open it, right? Again, just don't be fooled. This is basically just JSON data. Firebase just formats it in this way. Right? So that's now our database. Now let us move forward here. So let's now create our Node.js project and install our dependencies, including Firebase. Okay, so Firebase, you need to install the library to be able to have your Node.js interact with it. So I'm just going to, you have to use this npm install firebase-admin-save. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use our existing project. Just make sure that project is working. This is the project that we've uploaded to Heroku. And you just basically install this thing. So I'm just going to copy this to install this. The name of the library is Firebase admin. So I can just go over here, paste that. Okay, so it's working. So that has been installed. Okay, so now we have to download the service account key from Firebase. So this service account key is used for security. It's used to authenticate Firebase services. Okay, so let's just go and follow this. So first we have to click the gear icon, then click service accounts. Okay, so copy the JSON file which contains your private key into the Node.js folder. So I have a sample right here. So let's try that. So let's just go into Firebase now. Okay, so we're gonna go here and go under project settings. And then I believe it's service accounts. Let's just double check that. Okay, so it's actually service accounts. So it says here generate new private key. Okay, so let's click on that. Generate key. And now you see that a new key is created, right? So you have to place this file. You have to place this file inside your Node.js folder. Node.js project can be authenticated with Firebase. So I have this thing here. And then I will just place it right here inside app folder. Yeah, that's simple, right? Then your Node.js will be authenticated already. Okay, so now we can create the route. Okay, so the rest of these things we already have. Okay, so what we need is basically this Firebase admin is service account, and then we have to initialize the app. So notice this is the same code as this one, except that this one will be the path to your key, your JSON. All right, so this has to be replaced with the JSON. So you just follow. Okay, so we're back here. Okay, so this file here is a path, right? This is the file, the JSON file, which contains which contains the security credentials. All right. Okay, so let's just go ahead and copy this. Okay, so again, there's a few things you have to change here. Okay, so I just want to be very clear that I'm just going to be copying this thing. Okay, so let's just go and copy this. So let's copy this, or you can also click this, copy. You can go now inside your app.js, So let me open that now in Visual Studio Code. Okay. All right, so from here, let me make this a bit bigger. Okay, so I'm just gonna have to paste this somewhere here. Just before your first route, you can paste it. Okay, so that's the thing. So the next thing is we have to change this to the path. All right, so to change this, we can just copy this. Okay, if this is your file, just copy this. Okay, so in Windows, you can also right-click it to copy this thing. Okay, don't type it in because you can see it's a little bit complicated. You have to copy this, somehow copy this file. So let's put that in. Now you have to put, because it's a path, you have to put a // here, like so. So it should look like that. So look carefully at this, at the format of this. If this is wrong in any way, this will not work. Okay. So notice as well where I'm placing my code. Okay, I just put it just before this route. Okay, next is we need to change this because there is actually a URL associated with our project. So let's go ahead and adjust that. So where do we find this? Okay, so under database, your URL is actually right here, right? You can see this is the URL. You could also see your URL in project settings. Oh, by the way, I almost forgot to mention. You need to make sure that there is an app in your project. This is a requirement. Okay, so if you see this, when you first create, you will see something like this. There are no apps in your project. Okay, so what you want to do is create it. So we don't want iOS or Android. We want this, which is web. Okay, so you have to click on this. Okay, and then it'll say register app. So you can give whatever name here. Again, I'll give it the same name. Look up bot 2. I won't set up Firebase hosting, and then just click register app. Sorry, this should. Okay. So make sure you do this step, or else it will not work as well. Oh, but actually, in your service account, sorry about that. In your service account, the database URL is already there. Yeah. So you don't have to change this. The only thing you need to change is this one here, right? So this one is correctly set up already. Okay, so that's your database URL. Okay, so it looks like so where is my